Welcome to the Agent Upgrade Podcast with your hosts Jasmine, Krnjetin, and Alan Corey, where we learn the strategies of top producing real estate agents so you have the tools to upgrade your own real estate career.
Welcome to another episode of Agent Upgrade with Jasmine, and today we have Adair Cates. Hello, Adair. Welcome to our show.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I am super excited for all of our listeners to get to meet you because you are one of my dear friends. I have known you for a really, really long time. And you're not in real estate specifically, but you are sort of in that transformational world. How do we upgrade our lives? Kind of a place in your life, and I think it would be really, really good for all of my podcast listeners to get to know you and to learn from you. So to start off with, I want to tell the story of how you and I met, because that
let's do that.
That was kind of funny, right? So this was I don't even know how long ago this was. The girls were just born, so that must be like what, 8
years ago.
Yeah, 8 years ago. So I got introduced to Adair. I don't quite remember how we got introduced in terms of like you came to me for a mortgage, but it was like you were referred by somebody type of thing. And so you came to me for a mortgage. You had literally just had your twins. We had a great experience. It's a lot of fun doing the loan together. And then somebody from the Clark Howard show reached out to me and they wanted to do an episode on how to shop for a mortgage. And then they said, wouldn't it be great if we also interviewed one of your clients while we did this interview session with you and Clark Howard? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. That would be great. And I had literally just closed your loan like a couple weeks before, but like it was like immediately we were like, all right, this is a soul sister fit right here. And so next thing you know, we pack up and Clark Howard crew shows up in front of your house.
Oh my gosh. I remember.
Yes.
The twins were so little. They were in their little car seats. I remember.
Tiny little things. Yes. And so I stood outside your house and they filmed and I talked about how to get a mortgage, and then they came in and you were like, yeah, it was so great. And I got all these different interest rates, but she had the best rate. And
so yeah, I think they were trying to figure out, the question was around like a lot of people, I think maybe at least at that time, didn't shop around for mortgages. And I had like gotten multiple different rates and offers and conversations. And anyway, they wanted to know like what that experience was. So
so
it was Joy and Coral's first television experience.
I brought them to the world.
How cool is that?
I love it. Yeah, so that was super fun. And then of course since then we've stayed in touch. We've stayed good friends, and so and we've gone to a lot of conferences together, and just in general stayed in touch. And so I thought it was very appropriate for you to be on our show today, of course, because that's just kind of how the universe works. I had a really close, dear friend of mine, Amy Weeks, who used to go to these conferences, positive thinking kind of things with me. She just passed away this week. And so I've been in the space where I've been like really just kind of like, you know how it is when you go through loss, which you do. And so that's kind of just been a big thing that's been weighing on me. And I'm kind of like it. I think that grief is one of those things that you ride through waves, you go up and down with it. And so I've been really trying to just kind of stay on the side of like just remembering how amazing she was, what a positive influence she has been on the world. She was also a real estate agent, and so she left her wife and the company behind for them to run. And now her wife's slogan is that she's got divinely guided real estate services that she offers. And so you've gone through a big big loss yourself. And so I thought that would maybe be something that you could just kind of help me think through.
Yeah, 100%. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, my heart breaks for you. And I don't know that there's anything harder than losing someone that you love. And even though, for us, I know we have spiritual beliefs that there's, they're still with us and they're still present and they can still be a part of our lives. It's really different. And there's some days when it's really hard to believe that, so just to tell the listeners my experience, so I had gone through the loss. So I guess the other thing is loss can be a loss of a life. It could be loss of a job. It could be loss of maybe you become an empty nester. So grief gets stirred up in a lot of different life circumstances. So if the listeners aren't necessarily going through losing a loved one, there's still pieces of this that will resonate if you've experienced any loss in your life. And going back, pandemic times, I think we all just lost a lot in that time. We lost our social connections. For those of us that traveled and enjoyed being, out and about and away from home, we lost the ability to, jump on airplanes and go places with such ease. And there was so much grief just in that time. And then I also was going through a divorce during the pandemic and the loss of, our family unit being together and what that was going to look like for, my ex and I to co-parent our children together and all of those things. And then, I thought, wow, this is a lot. This is enough. This is really stressful. And then in February, so in December, we were officially divorced of 2020. And then in February of 2021, he actually very unexpectedly passed away 3 days after his mom. So we were dealing with, losing his mom. And then he passed away 3 days later. And of course, it was complete life upheaval. He's a very active parent to Joy and Coral. We, I thought we're doing a really good job with the co-parenting and, navigating that together. And I still am processing what it means to do life without him. Yeah. And that might actually be the case for a while. It could be the case for ever. I don't know. But I've learned a lot of really, really powerful lessons that I will say what got me through those first probably 6 months was a really deep spiritual connection to him. And just remembering to ask him to help. And I did that a lot because it got overwhelming for me to just be a soul mother, a business owner, of twins, and obviously like I had moved out and he kept our house. So I had to move back into our house. I moved 4 times in the span of 12 months, just based on, how everything panned out. And, grief is just, it's not an easy road. And when you're in that space of loss, it can feel really dark, even when you have those moments of glimmer of like connection to the lost loved one, or, I can do this, or other possibilities might open up that maybe wouldn't have been possible before, but it's still quite a difficult.
Yeah. And it's I guess it's also really startling when somebody that's very young passes away, because then that just like, that's, of course our, our parents, grandparents, that's more acceptable, so it also does bring home the point of just, even though like for a lot of us here, we're like in a real estate business and it's just go nonstop, and we're working really hard to create this life, whatever, or help clients, get into homes. And sometimes it's all so fast paced that, that, you know, it's not until something like this happens that you like kind of get, you know, sit down on your ass and you're like, oh my God, like
it's like a grinding halt.
Yeah, it's just like, whoa, like, you know, just kind of just the loss is one thing, and then realizing like none of this can be taken for granted. None of this,
Yeah.
we gotta like really, because that is, you know, with Amy, like that was the life, that was it. It stopped right there. She didn't have, you know, all these other closings or all these other things. It just the end, right? The end, right? And so we have to live in such a way that whenever that comes, whether that's today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, whenever we get there, that we're going to feel like we lived a beautiful life. We lived a really good life. We were present. We were, whether that was joy or sorrow, we were present. We were fully in our lives. And, you know, that's just something that kind of, I think also in real estate, like especially right now, the market is shifting pretty significantly. And so there is also like a lot of like, you know, a lot of fear going through people's minds of like, you know, what's going to happen? Where are we going? And so I think that some of the things that you are really good at and that you teach is just these ideas of becoming grounded, of like creating rituals, daily practices. And I really wanted to hear you kind of talk a little bit about how we can bring some of that into our lives when there is chaos, whether it's somebody passing or just like you're just in it, you're just dealing with chaos.
And you know, a lot of these challenges, like, you know, like the shifting real estate market, and I'm not in real estate directly, but I currently have 2 properties I'm trying to sell because I'm the executor of the estate for Joy and Coral's dad. And it is really different. You know, it's very different when I'm like, well, just, you know, 8-9 months ago, this house would have sold in 3 days, and here we are, you know. So I can understand in a very indirect way how challenging that could be. And I will say it is a loss. It's you are grieving something. When you have a change, there's grief because there's death. Obviously losing a life is different, but it still can be grief when you go through these hard times. So for me, my practices, I'm really grateful that I had them for years. It's almost like I was preparing for this really, really challenging time in my life. And now I can truly say that these practices are here for me in the good times and the bad. They help to elevate and uplift me when I'm in a place of feeling good and being in joy. I can expand that and feel that more. And then when I'm in a place of deep grief, it just helps me get out of bed and see, at least be able to see glimmers of light in the darkness, even if I'm in, you know, a place of just really deep sorrow or sadness. But, you know, for me, I wake up every single morning early. I'm an early bird. Not everybody is. And currently, I everything, you know, I shift my mornings on a, you know, occasion, but every morning begins with some type of quiet contemplation. And so right now I'm really into Kundalini yoga. So I do a Kundalini practice every morning for about 45 minutes. And that, if you're not familiar with Kundalini, it's a lot of subtle body movements and breath work. I've really gotten into, both through practice and research, the power of breath.
Yes.
It is the thing that is the easiest thing for us to access, that makes the biggest impact, that we all take for granted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
absolutely.
through,
Deep
you know,
breathing,
deep breathing, if you only do one thing, deep breathe through your nose. Deep breathe through your nose. It activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It gets you to a place where you're releasing vitality hormones into your body instead of stress hormones. So, for me, breath has been a really powerful anchor these last couple of years. I also a big believer in appreciation and active, I have my gratitude journal every day. And right now I'm doing a gratitude challenge with some friends where we send each other 3 things we're grateful for every single day. And it's really amazing. Again, it's simple, but it rewires our brain. And so when we're in a place of pain and discomfort, we're not trying to spiritually bypass that or have that positive, toxic positivity to get over it. But there's always something that we can appreciate, even if it's, a tiny little thing like the blue sky or Mother Nature or a beautiful tree or the laughter of our kids or whatever it might be. It's tiny little things. And then that way we shift our perspective. So there's physiological changes that we can make through breathing. And then our emotions are a primary driver of our physiology. And so when we are in gratitude, again, we're in a space of healing. And we're in a space of upliftment in our bodies. And then from that place, we can get to neutral. And I think when you're in a tough time and when you're grieving, you're going to feel the sadness, you're going to feel the loss, maybe the fear. And the practices are a way to just find some peace of what it feels like to be in neutral. I never expected myself to feel any certain way, like in terms of, I got to be happy or I've got to be upbeat. I allowed myself to be wherever I was. And I gave myself the relief through breath, through gratitude practices, through, conversations with people like you that I have a deep connection with, that can help me process. And that's enough. You don't have to get to a place of feeling exuberant joy when you're in a time of challenge.
Yeah, I think that sometimes I feel like one of like very strange but little known facts that people maybe know or use is like soothing yourself.
Yes.
Is like, it's almost like a superpower.
It is 100% a superpower. Yeah. Call it self-regulation, self-soothing, self-nurturing, self-love, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Definitely
being
a
able to
superpower.
just being able to take yourself from like a really stressed out place to just get back to neutral, right? You don't have to go from stressed out to super joyful. Like, you just need to go get into that neutral place, get into that
100%.
softer place where you are not like on guard.
Not in that fight or flight, not in that like cortisol pulsing through your body all the time. Yeah. And, I've done a lot of, I think one of the most important things for us to do is we're getting to neutral and we're finding ways to soothe ourselves, and we have the space and the time, because it's not, you're not going to go to this place right away, but is to look back and just ask that question. What am I learning? What have I learned about myself? What, how might, another one of the questions I've asked a lot is like, how might I turn this pain into purpose? There has to be fuel for service in this. There has to be a way for me to be able to help others through this pain that I'm going through. And as I've reflected back, I've reconnected with this idea that really throughout my life, I was so outward, looking for the soothing outside of me, from a friend, from, retail therapy, from a run. And, I'm not necessarily saying any of that's bad. You want to have the right support system, and exercise is great, and buy yourself cute things. Awesome. But I was seeking something in that. And it was like an insatiable desire for somebody to tell me that I was okay and that everything was going to be okay. And what I've learned is I've actually moved into these practices partially because I was constantly disappointed by the outside world. The outside world actually can't do much to help you feel better. Like there's certain little boosts, and there may be certain people that, yes, you can get a hug from them, and yes, they can love on you and you feel it. But even for me, I just realized, you know, a lot of the relationships I had and a lot of the people in my life were not capable of holding that type of nurturing space that maybe I wanted or needed from them. That's changed in my life. Like I feel like I have more of that now, but I think it has changed because I went within to find that nurturing in myself, and then was able to find people that matched that same sense of care and nurturing. And so I truly do believe, you know, it starts within, and we have to find a way to soothe and regulate in ourselves, to really, to be well and to be that, you know, island of sanity in the sea of chaos.
Yeah, I think that especially in the real estate world, like, you know, other people's needs always, you know, like you're always like everything is an emergency, right? Because when people are buying a home, right, there's a moving truck and grandma and the dogs and everybody, and that just kind of gets dumped on you, right? And so you have to be able to be like that grounded, solid force that's going to say everything is going to be all right, even though like your clients are losing their mind or it's earnest money on the line. You're talking the biggest investment people are making in their life, and then you just kind of, especially as a real estate agent, like you're like the therapist. Everybody kind of jokes about that, you know, but the reality is like you have to be able to serve as that buffer and not take on their stress. That's not your job. Your job is to get them to the closing table. You're there as a negotiator, but you are not, you have to be solid in yourself, meaning that, you know, knowing how to keep yourself in that give or take neutral zone. Maybe you walk a little bit faster, try to help them, but like you've got to stay in your lane, in order for it to not just constantly, otherwise you just live your life constantly in fight or flight, because there is another client, there's another client, there's another closing. Like, it's just nonstop, right?
100%.
And so you have to, and so I think that some of those little practices where in the morning you take the time to meditate or get, you know, the deep breathing, like those are the things that are kind of like the ground, the foundation. You know, like you don't have time not to meditate.
100. It's like an investment. You know, and if it's not happening, I'm not going to be at my best. My health is not going to be at my best. And then I'm not going to be able to be there for the people in my life that I need to be there for, my family, my clients. You know, it's impossible to be fully grounded and fully present. For me, I'm sure there are some people who can do it without having practices. However, for me, you know, it's just become non-optional. You know, it's gotta be every day, to reap the benefits, and it's a cumulative effect. So over time, it builds. It builds.
Yeah. And I think that, like you mentioned, like the breathing, you know, I know for myself, like when there is stressful things going on, or I'm working on a file and I'm on a super tight deadline or something like that, like I'll notice myself, like I'm literally like I breathe from here to here. It's just like a small window, like short, quick little breaths, you know, and like I have to literally like calm myself down, like take a deep breath. Everything is going to be okay. Like, you know, that's one of the things, but breath is always that one thing that you have access to no matter what is going on. Like you can breathe deep, and that'll immediately just start bringing your anxiety down and bringing you down to a level where you're like, okay, I can take on your craziness right now because I'm solid and I'm here to help. Otherwise we're all just running around like chickens with our heads cut off.
The world is coming at us. I even heard this recently, that the globe is actually spinning faster on the axis. And so like everything is accelerated. The rate of change has just dramatically accelerated, you know, first of all, with the takeoff of, you know, technology over the last, 50 years. And, you know, everything that we've experienced the last few years, like we're dealing with all kinds of stuff that we never imagined we would be facing. We had no way of ever imagining we'd face something like, as the pandemic. And there's a million other things, natural disasters that have just like really increased. We're seeing real damage to our globe, and we even saw repair happen based on our behavior in the pandemic. There's all these, questions around the supply chain and being able to, all these things that we took for granted. So the world's changing so fast. Everything's moving so fast. And so we naturally, because we are energy bodies, we feel that, and it has an effect on us. And if we allow all the input to come from the outside, and we start to breathe shallow, the cortisol starts to get going in the body, the stress hormone, then we become incapable, because what happens when we're breathing shallow is we're actually not getting enough oxygen to the brain and to the body to where we can be in our higher level thinking brain. Like we can't even access it, because we are literally in that trigger, fight, flight, freeze trigger mode. So our brains, they don't work well when we're in that place. And something I learned was what I teach now and call perfect breath, which is inhaling to a count of 5 or 6, like 5.5 is the kind of the average. So if it's 5 or if it's 6, that's okay. But inhaling through your nose, 5, 6 seconds, exhaling 5, 6 seconds, or you can do a longer exhale to really get your parasympathetic nervous system going. And the interesting thing about it's the 5.5 in, 5.5 out. And if you do that, you have 5.5 breaths in a minute, which is really kind of an interesting geometry. If you think about it. But the key with breath is through the nose, slow, deep, and less breath. Because if you're breathing fast, and there are some breathing techniques like Wim Hof and some things we do in Kundalini where you intentionally breathe fast, but that is a nervous system workout. You're literally stressing your nervous system so that when you do get stressed, your body is okay with it. You can handle it. You can feel it. But if there's just one takeaway from this podcast, if people learn the 5.5 in, 5.5 out means 5.5 a minute through the nose, that in and of itself just can be a complete game changer. And I was someone who dismissed the breath. Like, I'm like, nope, I want journal prompts. I want a book. I want a guru. I want yoga poses. I want all of that. And then in everyday life, when things, everything got turned upside down, it was like, well, when I'm in the middle of Home Depot and I'm about to have a breakdown because I'm feeling intense grief for some strange reason in the middle of a Home Depot, which it happens when you're grieving, I could breathe anywhere. I'm not going to do a yoga pose, right? I'm not going to do some of my Kundalini movements during that time, but I can always breathe. And that's been a real game changer for me.
That's interesting, because I've always, whenever I meditate, the way I meditate is I do the breathing, but I always count to 5, and then 5 up and 5 down. That's just been like my zone. Different people like meditate on different sounds and whatnot, but I always just count my breath, and it's always like that 5, hold for a second, and then go back down. So
it's well researched. Yeah, it's well
researched. It was working.
It changes the biochemistry in your body. It evens out your nervous system. It gets, more of the parasympathetic response, because our bodies, the way the world is, we tend to be in that sympathetic response, which is fight or flight, foot on the gas, accelerator. With parasympathetics, the opposite. It's the braking system. It's the rest and digest. So that breath has been, well researched. And interestingly enough, there's been some correlations and connections with like the amount of time it takes to say the rosary and the amount of time it takes to do some of the Kundalini chants. They've averaged it out. It's all like that 5.5 in and out. It's fascinating.
Wow. So that's some ancient stuff right there.
Exactly. It's an ancient art, and it's completely accessible to everyone all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me a little bit about, so what I find interesting is that the similarities you have with some of my listeners is, you're a business owner. You're not in real
Mm-hmm.
estate, but you're a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
You're a mom, a single mom for
Mm-hmm.
a long time, right? And so tell me some of the things that you have, whether it's just things you have learned or some ideas that you have for, I'm always really, really interested in how do we create a beautiful life for ourselves, like right now, not when I have enough money in my 401k, not when the kids are in college. Like, how do you, so what are some of your go-tos and
I love it.
for creating that moment, that coziness, that whatever that is in your life?
It's so great that you just used the word cozy, because I love cozy. I've really, as I said, one of my main questions has been, how might I turn this pain into purpose?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really starting to feel this kind of deeper overarching purpose emerge. It's always been there, but I think I have just more clarity after going through, some really challenging times and a lot of change and transition. That, a big piece of my purpose is to create that, like, cozy space, like around the fire. I want people to be able to cultivate that within themselves, that space
Mm-hmm.
of coziness, comfort, well-being, peace, whatever you want to label it. And then the work that I do is oftentimes, that plus, how do you create that in groups, in gatherings, in meetings, in anything from like a meeting with your team to, I was with my partner hosting at the Conscious Capitalism CEO Summit a couple of weeks ago. We did some facilitation, and I led some of the practices there. And the whole goal with all of it is to create that sense of safety, the safety and warmth inside of ourselves and in a group that helps you feel open, alive. So for me, it has a lot to do with the people I surround myself with, the conversations I have, the questions I ask myself, because our self-talk can be very, it can be very depleting sometimes. So, looking for those questions that are regenerative, that like the question of how might I turn my pain into purpose? And so that manifests, through my own well-being, through my relationships, the conversations I have, and also through the spaces that I create. So I love, every morning my Kundalini is by the fireplace. So I live in Ohio now, and so we can have fires a lot because the mornings can be chilly even in the summers. And even when it wasn't that chilly, I would just open the door and have the fire on. So I love fires. I think there's some like really awesome metaphor there. And I think everybody feels good around a fire, like, and
right.
good things
So
happen. It's just a warm, safe space. And that it's just, so I love that. I love candles. I love essential oils, like really into like yummy essential oils. I love, cozy, like clothes, I'm big on comfort these days. I think that was another thing from the pandemic. It's just like, yeah, I want to look cute, but I'm not going to wear heels ever again. Like I might wear heels. Like I can't even imagine a scenario where I might wear heels, maybe for a costume one day. But, I'm all about cozy clothes. And I think, everybody, really the most important thing is for you, to connect with your own sense of purpose and your own values, around what you create in your life, and making the beautiful life has to be really deeply connected to who you are as a person. And for me, I'm really big into aesthetics. Like I love for my home to be clean, organized, neat, no dishes in the sink. Like that's literally like so important to me. Which for some people, they don't care. They love the chaos. I definitely have one kid who is like, as as someone who helps me around the house says, you're like, she's your artist, because look at her desk, like it's a disaster. So for everybody, it's a little bit, it's different. Everybody has their different thing, but those are some things for me that are create that sense of warmth and comfort and good energy.
Yeah, I think that so part of my childhood growing up, I lived in Scandinavia, right? And so, they just, because it's cold and dark for so much of the year, you just got no choice. You got to make this thing cozy.
Yes.
So I remember one of the first memories I remember this, the woman that I was staying with, it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was pitch dark outside. It was raining. And I was like, I came from Yugoslavia where, we've got like the perfect weather, the sunny, the Mediterranean, like bright people, all that kind of stuff. And then I was like in this dark dungeon place in Scandinavia. And she looked outside the window and she was like, oh, it's raining. It's the perfect time to have a cup of tea. Come, let's snuggle up with a cup of tea because it's raining. And I was like, okay, I guess I can make do. I think I can get into this, And so that was like also like in Sweden, it was like one of the first times when I saw like they put like these candles in the windows, like like the kind of like the triangle looking candle things. They go into windows and the holidays, but it's not. What's different in America is that it's all commercialized.
Yeah.
Where in Scandinavia, it's kind of like it's more rustic and real and just like it's candles.
It's like a way of life. It's like how they get through it's the season
exactly.
of, light. You've got to generate the light and the warmth because it's not coming from the sun.
Exactly. And then they have like the Santa Lucia, like the holidays where like there's like this saffron bread that you make and you bake, and the girls dress in like these white dresses with like candles in their hair and all that. So there's like a lot of traditions that are just not. There's nothing. At least when I was there. Okay, I was there. A while ago. So, it was very organic, but it definitely instilled that, like, I know that feeling, that I'm searching for that, of course, they even have a word for it that we don't, right? Hey, it's like,
yes,
it's that whole thing. But that, especially for those of us in real estate, like, I almost feel like it's like, yes, we're selling homes, right? But we're really more like, how do we create that? How do we know that feeling for us so that we can help our people create that feeling in their homes, not just houses, but like how do they create that sense of home? I think it's all sort of connected, but you've got to know that, you got to know that line yourself. Like, how do you create that feeling for yourself so that you can sort of pass it around?
Yeah. And that, again, maybe not everyone values it. Like I'm very big on like figure out what your values are. However, when you have that sense of home, and hygge, I think is what I call it. I don't even know how. I know what you're talking about because that's what my designer that's helping me is like. This is what we're creating in your home. We use a lot of Scandinavian influences, and it's really, really cool. But everybody knows what it feels like to come into a space that is warm and comforting, and you feel like you're at the fire with a weighted blanket or with that warm cup of tea. Maybe when you're not, like you can cultivate that feeling inside of yourself, and it opens you up. It really opens you up because your body is safe. Your nervous system is calm. And when you're there, you have access to a whole different world of thinking, reflection, because your brain is open, your heart is open. And so when you're creating that space, I think it could easily be taken for granted, but it really is the source of a lot of good things.
A lot of joy and self-soothing and ease. Yeah.
And it's so needed in the world.
Yeah. And it's also what's required, I find, is that you have like the key ingredient, you have to be present.
100%.
You have to be there, like I feel like a lot of us are so, especially, with work that just kind of constantly is coming at you. The phone is like a super distractor. Like it's really hard to disconnect from yourself from that, and then like plant yourself in that space where you're safe and you're like, this is my little thing. And whether you're reading a book or drinking a cup of tea or doing yoga or meditating or whatever it is, like you have to literally, like the world is coming at us, like it's like constantly fighting to get our attention from every possible direction, right? Every single app on our phone is made to like just suck
It's
us in.
designed
Like,
to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so how do you like stop yourself from scrolling on TikTok and say like, no, actually I'm going to be right here, baking this pie with my kids, and I'm not going to let the phone drag me into whatever that is, or I'm not going to let this contract that may be falling apart like take half of my attention, but just like being totally there, because I think that's what we need to refuel ourselves, to really become. I remember a really really long time ago, this could have been like literally like 20-30 years ago, I read this book by Dr. Barbara DeAngelis. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She wrote this book called Real Moments. And so she said that I don't remember it, but what I remember of this book is like this idea of how we create real moments in our brains so that we can remember them. And so she said literally, like when you're having a moment, you almost have to be narrating that moment to yourself to like completely bring yourself into the moment, so that it doesn't stay just like a blur of 1,000 different Thanksgivings or 1,000 different walks in the park, and I used to practice this a whole lot when my son was really little, like just him in the stroller and he's holding this little thing and he's eating this little bagel with this, like I would just narrate these moments to myself as they were happening, because I was like, I don't want to ever forget this moment, what this felt like, and it's like, this is how I felt in that moment. And magically enough, he's 20 now, and I'm like, I still remember that walk. I don't remember every walk, but the walks that I narrated to myself, I remember them. And so it's almost like that's one of the tricks that she said to like ground, I would say now in my words, it would be to grounding myself is like to literally like suck my attention just like all in here, right here in this moment, washing dishes.
Our attention is literally our most precious commodity. Where we place our attention, we have the ability to put our attention on anything, right? We could put it on that stressful client. I could put it on, the mess in my house, or I could put it on how cute my kid is when they're reading their book on the couch by the fire. I can choose that. So you're right, it's a currency. Attention is a currency that we all have, and that oftentimes just gets wasted. It just gets wasted. And what you're talking about has been called labeled as what's called savoring. And so gratitude is a practice of, taking the time to write down, maybe in a journal, what you're grateful for, more, from your present, maybe even into your past, right? Savoring is present tense, in the moment, active gratitude, right? Like you're savoring every little thing about it. And, I was just giving my partner a compliment around this, because he will stop, like, we were about to walk out of the office. We did this spontaneous, let's go take a walk in the national park on the trails in the middle of the day, because it's so nice and it might snow this weekend. And he just stops and he was like, we just have to remember how special it is that we found each other, and that, because that's my happy ending to my hard story, is that I literally have found like the person that I know I was meant to live the rest of my life with. I haven't ever felt this kind of deep soul level love before. And he's so good at just in the moment, actively appreciating, like, I'm so glad that we found each other. It's so amazing that we're standing here in an office together, giving each other a hug. And, you know, we've both been through some really hard shit the last couple of years. And here we are, we found each other. We get to do life together. Isn't it a blessing? You know, but he's just so good at that. And I appreciate that you brought that up again. And it's just a really good reminder. My mind a lot of times is very future facing. I'm pretty good at releasing past things, you know, but for me, it really is, I think, being more in that savoring place is it's a game changer. It's truly a game changer.
And it's interestingly enough, it's sort of like a muscle that you have to cultivate, you have to practice, because we're not
uncomfortable
used
at first.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also to just sometimes I know that, like, when things are working out, when everything lines up and everything works out, we're like, oh, okay, good, that thing got worked out, and off we. And I was like, no, like, we literally like, all these things worked out, like literally one thing after another. Like, there was so many moving parts. There's so many crazy ways this could have gone, and here you are, like, you know, whatever that is. Like, hey, you just bought a freaking house. Like, there was an inspector and an appraiser and an attorney and an agent and a grandma and all these people, and here you are in this moment, as opposed to just like, oh yeah, we signed the papers and now we got a moving truck, and just people just we just naturally, we just kind of want to keep glancing over it. But unless you like stop and drop and be like, hey dude, like, holy shit, this actually just all unfolded miraculously for us.
Yes. And I you know, kind of going back where we started, part of what I felt disconnected from in being in like really deep grief for, you know, a long time. I feel like I'm starting to emerge and be able to kind of look through different lens at everything that happened. But you know, it's hard to access that savoring. It's hard to access even appreciation. And that's okay. And that's why I say, you know, if you are in a place of that type of sorrow, if you can just get yourself through breathing or with a cup of tea by the fire to that, to the neutral, to the cozy, to the comfort, to the, you know, safe place inside of yourself, then those little glimmers start to come through. They really, really do. And then those can actually, you know, be a guide forward. I know that they certainly were for me. There were certain just moments of light that, you know, one of which was, you know, getting together with my partner and realizing like, wow, what a stark contrast, like deep, really sorrowful, sad grief to, wow, no, I really feel like this is my soulmate, and that I like a 1 in a million that I got to meet him, and that we get to be together and we get to do life together. And honestly, like, the crazy part of it is, had I not lost Chris, we wouldn't have ever happened as like, we wouldn't have been able to line up. There's just no way. There's no way. I wouldn't have been able to move to Ohio. And so there's those little glimmers that when you're in it, you know, just get to neutral, and then little glimmers will happen, and you'll start to see, wow, everything truly is happening for me, not to me.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Getting to that place of just realizing that maybe you don't have to fight everything.
just allow and let things work out. I will say, you know, the power of surrender and letting go and just releasing, because, you know, when there's so much chaos, you can't hold on to everything. You can't try and contain it. And then there's, you know, the emotional aspect of just being overwhelmed to the point where you're also not mentally, emotionally capable of holding everything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of power in just being able to allow and let things come and let things go.
Yeah, I love that. So tell me a little bit about if some of our listeners want to connect with you and learn from you. Tell us just a little bit about what your business and
what I'm up to in the world.
What do you do? Like, yeah. We should have probably
Yeah.
started with that, but they know.
Oh no, I've really enjoyed every minute of this conversation. So I'm pretty easy to find. It's all my handles are at Adair Cates. And one of my current main focuses might not actually be very easy to find, just based on how things are set up right now. But I'm really big into two things, which is one piece is what I'll call conscious facilitation. So as I said before, bringing groups together and inviting safety and connection through conversations by asking generative, life-giving questions. And I do this, in corporate groups and environments. I do it for women's retreats, a variety of different environments. So that work, actually, the best way to find that is, we can put all this information in the show notes, is through the Exchange Approach website. And it's Exchange without the E on the front, approach. And that's the conscious facilitation work that I'm very active with, and with my partner, John. And the other piece of what we do is conscious leadership. And so if the conscious facilitation is the outward work, the macro of bringing groups together, the conscious leadership is the micro. It's the internal. It's the how do I lead well from within. It's the practices and the neuroscience behind what happens inside of us when we are in stress versus peace, and how we can even reframe our stress to really help us move forward instead of being paralyzed or reactive, as we talk about in the conscious leadership work that I do. So if anybody's interested, you can find me. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. We'll make sure you get the Exchange Approach website. And through both of those venues, we offer 2 free 2-hour workshops. And I can put links to sign up for those as well if anybody might be interested in learning more about either one of those.
Sweet. I love it. Well, I have really enjoyed connecting with you, Adair, and I know that our listeners are going to be happy to learn some new tools and tricks, as always.
Wonderful.
to being better real estate agents, and also, being just more sane in general.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show. It was lovely to see you.
You're welcome.
And
same here.
Until next time.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Agent Upgrade Podcast. If you are an agent looking for a new mortgage lender, start with Jasmin at jasminteam.com. If you want to learn about real estate investing and working with investors, check in with Alan at thehouseofac.com. See you next time on Agent Upgrade.